It was a Thursday morning, the kind where the sun barely peeks through your curtains and you think maybe, just maybe, the world will leave you alone for one more day. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I almost didn't look. My days of jumping to answer family texts were behind me, or so I told myself. But old habits die hard. I reached for my phone and saw Mom's name on the screen. Greater than Mom, you need to get that spare room ready. Sarah's moving in tonight. I stared at the message, my chest already tightening. I blinked twice, thinking maybe I was still dreaming. There was no hello, no warning. Just an order delivered like always. Like I was the family's on-call maid or a hotel manager instead of her only daughter, finally living on my own. I typed back, fingers trembling. Greater than what? Why? Mom, I can't just. She replied instantly. Greater than don't be selfish. You have a spare room. Sarah needs help. That's what family does. Sarah. My cousin. Or, as I sometimes bitterly thought, the family's favorite stray. I knew the drill. Sarah had made a mess of something again, lost another apartment, another job, maybe a boyfriend, and now it was my turn to pick up the pieces. I could practically hear my mother's voice in my head. It's just for a few days, honey. You don't want to see her on the street, do you? I stared at the walls of my tiny two-bedroom apartment, the first place that was ever just mine. The spare room was barely a room at all. It was my studio, my sanctuary, filled with half-finished canvases and the quiet, precious feeling of freedom. And Mom wanted to hand it over, just like that. I set my phone down and buried my face in my hands. The same old ache settled in my stomach, the one that always came whenever Mom decided my needs were less urgent than someone else's crisis. If you've ever been called selfish by your own mother, you know the kind of pain that sits just below the skin. It stings. But it's familiar, like an old bruise you press just to remind yourself it's there. Growing up, I was always the one expected to adjust, to sacrifice, to give up my bed, my toys, my seat at the table. Mom called it being flexible, but what she really meant was, be invisible so everyone else can be comfortable. I learned to keep my head down. To let Sarah have the last cookie, even if it was the only treat I'd had all week. To let cousins stay in my room whenever their parents fought, even if I ended up sleeping on the floor. By the time I moved out after saving every penny from 3 jobs, I swore I'd never let anyone treat my space like a public park again. I worked so hard for this place. I loved every inch of the chipped window ledge, the way the sunlight fell across my messy art table, the books stacked in every corner. It was small. It was imperfect. But it was mine. And I'd be damned if Sarah, with her endless dramas, was going to turn it into a crash pad. I didn't reply to Mom's text. Not right away. I needed to breathe. Instead, I got up, made myself coffee, and tried to shake the feeling of being 16 years old again, helpless and cornered. But my phone kept buzzing. First, Mom. Then Sarah. Greater than Sarah, hey. Mom says I can stay with you? Thank you so much, I'll be there by 6. Do you have space for my cat? I almost dropped my mug. A cat? My building didn't even allow pets. This was not happening. I dialed Mom. She picked up immediately, her tone already loaded with exasperation. "Mom," I started, as calmly as I could, "I'm sorry, but I never said Sarah could stay here. I barely have enough space for myself, and She cut me off, her words sharp and practiced. "Oh, come on. Don't be so dramatic. You have a whole room sitting empty. It's not forever. She just needs a place to land. That's what family does." My stomach twisted. "Mom, you didn't even ask her." She let out a sigh. That sigh. The one that meant I was already losing. "I'm not going to argue about this. Sarah's in trouble. She's family. I'm disappointed in you. I thought you were more compassionate than this." She hung up before I could answer. I stood there, phone in hand, heart racing. All my childhood fears of the guilt, the shame, the feeling that I would never be good enough came flooding back. I wanted to scream. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, staring out the window at a world that suddenly felt much smaller. The rest of the day was a blur of anxious pacing, angry texts, and unwanted memories. Family group chat exploded. "Greater than Aunt Linda, heard Sarah's staying with you. So sweet of you to help her out. Greater than Uncle Rick, wish I had a cousin as generous as you. Hang in there, kiddo." The backhanded praise stung. They all thought I had already said yes. Mom must have told everyone I'd happily agreed. The lie made me feel sick. My phone rang again, Sarah this time. I let it go to voicemail. 5 minutes later, a text. "Greater than I can bring an air mattress if you don't have a bed. Don't worry, I'm low maintenance. Can you pick me up from the train station at 5:30? My hands shook. It was as if my no meant nothing. Like I was a footnote in my own life. I tried to breathe. Tried to remind myself that I deserved peace, too. That my boundaries mattered, even if no one else thought so. I sent one final text, voice trembling as I typed. "Greater than Sarah, I can't have guests right now. It's not a good time. Please find another arrangement." No response. At 5:15, my doorbell rang. I froze. I hadn't given anyone my building code. I crept to the window and peered down. There they were. Mom, Sarah, and 2 huge suitcases. They were standing at the building's front door, pressing the call button again and again. I stared in disbelief. They had just shown up, bags and all, confident that I would give. My phone rang, and I answered on the second ring. "Let us up," Mom said, her voice brisk. I said no, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I can't do this, Mom. I'm sorry, but I need my space." There was a pause. I could hear Sarah whining in the background. Mom's voice went cold. "If you don't let us up, I'll tell everyone what a selfish daughter you are. I raised you better than this. You're lucky to even have your own place. You know some people would kill for an apartment like yours?" I felt the old panic rising tight in my chest, heavy in my throat. But then something shifted in me. A kind of quiet anger. A clarity I hadn't felt in years. I thought about all the times I'd been pushed aside, guilted into silence, forced to give up what little I had so someone else could feel comfortable. Not this time. I hung up. I stood behind my locked door, hands shaking, listening as they tried to buzz up over and over. I closed my eyes and tried to breathe. I knew what was coming, a storm of messages, threats, emotional blackmail. But then I heard footsteps on the stairs outside. Voices. Someone else was talking to Mom and Sarah in the lobby. I crept to the door and listened. It was my building manager, Mr. Elias. He sounded calm, but firm. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice carrying up the stairwell, "but she didn't approve you. No visitors are allowed up unless the tenant gives permission. You'll have to leave." The silence was deafening. Sarah's voice broke first, high and shrill. "What?" "But she's my cousin. I have a right to." Mr. Elias didn't budge. "This is private property. If you're not on the approved guest list, I can't let you in. I'm just following the rules." For a moment, I thought Mom would argue. But she didn't. She just gathered up Sarah's bags, and they stomped out the front door. I watched from behind my blinds, my heart pounding so hard I could barely hear anything else. I felt a broken bas-relief. Guilt. Triumph. Sadness. Mostly, I felt like I had finally stood up for myself. And that feeling was brand new. If you've ever had to set a boundary with your family even when everyone called you selfish, go ahead and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You're not alone. You might be wondering how the building manager knew not to let them in. It wasn't magic. It was something I learned the hard way. A few months ago, after Sarah borrowed my apartment key and trashed my place for a weekend party, I realized I needed to protect myself. So I went to the building manager and asked him to enforce the guest policy, strictly for my apartment. No one gets in unless I approve it first. No exceptions. I felt paranoid at the time. But after today, I realized it was the smartest thing I'd ever done. I could almost hear my younger self cheering for me. That night, my phone was bombarded with texts. "Greater than Mom, I can't believe you did this to your own family. You're so cold." "Greater than Sarah, I hope you're happy. I have nowhere to go. This is your fault." The guilt tried to creep back in, as it always does. But I sat in my quiet apartment, the only sound the hum of my old fridge, and reminded myself. I am not selfish for needing my own space. I am not heartless for saying number. I am not a villain for wanting a little peace. The next day, my apartment felt brighter. I painted in my studio for hours, the light streaming in just the way I loved. For the first time, I didn't feel like an imposter in my own home. I felt proud. Free. Like I finally belonged. Family can make you feel guilty for putting yourself first, especially if you're the easy one, the good one, the one who never says number. But sometimes, loving yourself means disappointing others. It means letting people call you selfish, and surviving it. It means standing up for your peace, even when your own mother is banging on the door. Have you ever been called selfish for setting a boundary with family? If you have, Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more real-life stories like this. Weeks passed. Sarah found another place to crash. Mom stopped calling at least for a while. The storm faded. The guilt eased. And in the quiet, I realized something important. I didn't lose my family. I found myself. And maybe, just maybe, that was the happiest ending I could have asked for. Has anyone ever called you selfish for protecting your boundaries? What did you do? Share your story in the comments. I promise you're not alone.